Hi, team. Welcome to 10 Talks. Today's conversation is about confidence. Who doesn't want confidence? Why don't we have it? And most importantly, how do we get it and it be authentic to really who we are and what matters to us? Well, you know that Mark and I are on this journey to really serve and support you and to set you up to live your best life. So, Mark, thank you again for being on our team and being here for our teammates. So let's start with what is confidence? Where does it come from? And how do we get it?
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for having me and letting me be a part of this experience. I love this topic. I think it's relevant pretty much at any point in life, especially in sport, especially when folks are transitioning from high school to college, college to a new job, and with change. We're kind of about to talk about that, but confidence is it really it's an inner belief about the preparation that you've had in your own abilities and then your ability to achieve. And there was a famous psychologist back in the 70s, Dr. Albert Bandura from Stanford, who had researched the topic of self-efficacy. Really interesting stuff if you kind of go into the nuts and bolts of it. But in kind of in summary, there were four tenets that he found that were really important for us, the building of self-efficacy and confidence. And the first one is mastery experiences or developing mastery. If you think about it, the easiest way for someone to become confident is to actually have a few small wins and to build upon them over time. And we talk a lot about winning in this arena, but metaphorically, it's learning that you can do something. So building that. So mastery experiences is really important. Number two is vicarious learning. So if you want to feel confident about something and actually to figure it out, be around people who are doing great things and kind of learn from those experiences. So that there's a social aspect to it. So if you see someone else doing what you want to do, you like kind of learn from them, right? So that's it's very 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 important to do that. uh, Three would be to model someone's behavior, basically like being around a role model or hero. So if you know that they're doing it, then you're going to want to continue. So it's kind of a little bit of an offshoot of vicarious learning. And then finally, social persuasion. So this is where we as humans, there really is an aspect of that connectedness. So you want to be around positive people. So for example, a coach, you would want a coach who is exhibiting positive messaging and people who can tell you that you can do something. So gain experience, positive mastery experiences, be around people who are doing what you want to be doing and follow their lead. And then three, be around people who also tell you that you can do something. So that's kind of the at the core what confidence is built on. But there's different ways you can do it. So I like to think of developing the inner belief is there's both an individual aspect to it as well as the step back how to actually coach to build confidence in a person who's clearly flailing.
So, what's so powerful about that, Mark, is that we have the power to do it. So many
Mhm.
times we think confidence is out here and how do we get it? And it really starts with owning what we want and doing the work. And so many times we hear doing the work. I think that is a phrase that is showing up over and over. The gift of it is that find what you really want to invest in. I think that's another really valuable component because to be great at something or good at it and to have those wins, you're going to have to put the time in and you're going to have to practice. And if you're practicing something you really don't want, you'll run out of willpower to be able to continue it. And so many times when other people put a belief system on us or other people tell us we should do this or you're so great at that, and it's not in alignment with how we authentically feel, the battle of being confident in something that we don't really want, it's not really a battle. You just got to give up the battle and own your truth and figure out exactly what it is you want. And I really love us talking about this in two steps. Number one, ourself, and number two, coaches or the people that we're around. And number three, I want to talk about parents because I think there's quite a system that's in play. So let's start with me. I can discover what I want, start finding people that I can model, start hanging out with those people, and start practicing. So I can follow those four in a very intentional way that I have complete control over. In sports, we do this all the time, right? We find somebody that's great at a sport and doing what we do, and we watch film over and over and over, and we really embrace it. And sure enough, we become like it because we have that, that neural pathway visual, looking at it, watching it, being it, hanging around people. So we can do that. Anything that we need to do in terms of that gets in the way of us being able to take that step and to really own that we want something.
Well, lots to unpack there. I love this. Okay, so a few thoughts. Like the
Mark, first of
perfect.
all, we never said this was going to be easy. When you say
No,
lots of
no.
like, here we go, let's do the work.
Yeah. So I think the best example in media about like this is like a textbook how to build a culture of confidence in your players is the TV show Ted Lasso. I mean, the guy comes in, harnesses the positive, gets rid of the negative, starts to individually connect with his players, talks about a belief system, puts the poster on the wall. He resonates positivity, right? And almost to an annoying amount until they finally buy in. Mind you, he has to be balanced by the tacticians, right? Sort of, Roy Kent, and he has his foils, but all the while they're getting on this wave. So he's a kind of a great example on a TV show about the great coaches that we know that exist in the world. Greg Popovich, John Wooden. I mean, all like folks that you buy into their system, and clearly they're going to be some good results. But the reason they also are respected because they have achieved the results. So it's a little bit of a bidirectional play.
Well, Mark, I just want to add in
yeah.
that they are being authentic to themselves. And I think this is what happens a lot of times with players, with coaches, with humans. We want a result like, oh, I love the Ted Lasso show. I love how much everybody loved him. That was amazing. Okay, I'm going to be like Ted Lasso. And yet internally, I don't feel like Ted Lasso. I got all kinds of anger and, I'm faking it. That to me is the conversation that we want to really understand, because we have to do the work internally to become what we want to be. You can't just be like, okay, I'm going to be positive, because as soon as there's stress, you're going to blow up and you're going to become who you really are. And then it's confusing because I thought you were this Ted Lasso, and all of a sudden, as soon as it got tough, you've been a completely different person.
Okay, well, let's talk about Ted Lasso's roster. And so, like, if you're a player that got to the level to play in the Premier League, clearly you got the talent. You had the physical tools. Well, it separates those that actually achieve from those who don't. They got to the level of the mindset and the mental skills, which is why we're talking. Let's take from personal experience here. So I had done the work. I got to medical school. I went off and did training. But when I showed up to Columbia on my first day of fellowship, I had wicked imposter syndrome. I'm surrounded by a bunch of brilliant people who clearly had done all these cool things. And I'm like, wait, I'm here. I'm with these people. And I had to remind myself, mind you, with a little bit of coaching, that, I had been selected. Like someone wanted me to be there. So if someone else thought I could be there, why shouldn't I? Eventually it came around to it and it was fine. But that's also where the athletes are. If they're stuck in a slump or whatever, if they've made it to the bigs, they put the time in, they put all that effort, the practice, the dedication, all that stuff. So they deserve to be there. So it's that internal belief of, I believe I'm here. I should be here. That's a giant hurdle for a lot of folks. So that's kind of like the initial kernel of, okay, what have I done in the past that's good? So Bandura actually goes through some questions that you need to ask yourself to be like, hey, these are constant reminders of how I can actually build my confidence. What are like three of the great achievements that I've had? What are some heroes that I've have emulated in the past? Who are some people who would tell me when I'm facing challenges that I can overcome that obstacle or achieve my greatest feat? And so you just kind of go through this running list of, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, and it builds on it. Mind you, having a coach there who knows you, that you're working with, as a constant reminder, it's a feedback loop, right? Not only are you doing the work and writing it down, but you're also being told it, and then it pays off. We'll kind of transition, but as far as the actual work to do, and I've said this a lot before, intentional practice. So you don't just show up to the driving range and hit a bunch of balls. You have to go to the course with an idea in mind of what you actually want to work on that day, based on what you may have seen on the course before. I'm using golf as an example because it's an easy thing, and I'm wearing a golf shirt as we speak. But you can't just go hit a bunch of balls. So I would want to practice whatever I need to do that day and move on. So write down SMART goals. It's in vogue. It's an acronym, SMART, SMART. So you got specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. Boom. So if your goals that you're working on aren't clearly focused on what you need to be achieving, and you can't measure them, and they're not totally far out, but they're like focusing on the small here and now, and they're also in an amount of time you have to do them, then what are you working on? They have to actually meet those criteria. And once you've actually written them down and you do the little stair step method, we call it a ladder, just as you would do a fear ladder. And when you're doing anxiety work, same with building confidence. And if you actually see the data like on your fridge, on each tick ladder of all the stuff that you've accomplished, I'm sorry, but you'll see how much you've progressed, and there's no doubting it, right? And eventually you'll get to the top of the mountain of whatever it is that you're wanting, but you can't focus on the mountain part, because I'm sorry, but if you're looking at the Himalayas, they look way too far off. But if you've actually been climbing the whole time, the top will be a lot closer.
Mark, let's transition to the coaching piece in terms of who you're hanging out with. So you yourself have decided, I've got the ladder, I've got the SMART goals, I know what I'm going for. Now we need to team up with a coach who's supporting you in that. How do we do it?
Well, so the coach themselves realizes that they're creating that culture that we were talking about before. And so as the player would want to find a role model that they can emulate, the coach has to be that role model. And so they actually have to walk the talk, right? And then they have to be able to sell their plan in a very reasonable way to their athletes, and they have to have a fun environment, because if you can work hard, but if you're not lightening it up and having the players enjoy what it is that they put so much time and effort into doing, then it'll become grating. They'll start to kind of not want to show up to practice, not put in all the effort, and it'll be self-defeating. There was a great quote by, Coach Lombardi stole it from Caesar, but it says, without training, they lacked knowledge. Without knowledge, they lacked confidence. Without confidence, they lacked victory. So it's all about culture and really selling that. It's same with parenting young kids, and we'll get to talking about parents in a little bit. Coaches should catch athletes when they're being good. So you want to notice and reward good confidence, and also really treat your players with respect. If someone's having a bad day, you gotta keep it in perspective, because one of the things that'll be like basically the virus on a page on a player's confidence is when something doesn't go the right way. And I think you were getting at that a little bit ago, is that what do you do when you hit adversity? Well, you had to have practiced in a way that emulates what the game's going to be. But fear is simply a choice. So if you're worried about what could go wrong, that's just like you have the two parrots on your shoulder. One is giving you positive messaging, and one's giving you negative. Why would you listen to this guy, right? You want to be thinking about all the positive things that you've done in the past, just as we were talking about Bandura. So yeah, I think that'd be about it from a culture perspective.
So for a coach who is a high achiever and wants to produce greatness, and they're frustrated because their team isn't showing up sharp, or isn't, they're really struggling with this culture of competitive greatness and fun and high level training, what are some components that a coach can do to really authentically change internally so they're not just kind of faking it and it blows up?
Well, the coach has to remember why they got into being a coach. I mean, it's by nature, it's a social experience, and they clearly like the sport that they're involved with, and they should be caring about the athletes that they are with. I mean, times have changed, and this is the 2020s now. And it's not like it's the 1950s where a bunch of football players are taken out into the desert and basically taken to the brink of, the dehydration and just said, if you work hard, things will pay off. Um, there's more empathy these days. So if the coach has to do some self-reflection, so if they were, and there is a lot of, we'll call it generational trauma, but they're going to probably coach how they were coached, and then just like the parents probably going to parent the way they were parented. If they actually want to stop the negative and probably recognize that maybe there were some good elements and they clearly got to the place that they are because of maybe some of the steering that they'd had, but there probably were some negative things that they don't have to include. So if they do some of their own work, and maybe that's meeting with the team mental health professional who's not just for the players but also for staff, then they can kind of reframe how they're communicating to players. So communication is so valuable and kind of the thing it's the key now to how teams operate in the current times versus the past.
Mark, you just said it brilliantly. It is communication, 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 and our coaches have to change. Our athletes are changing. I always find that so interesting that a coach says the first thing to a player, well, welcome to the team, and you've got to do it my way now. So things are going to change. It's different from high school. And then when we say to coaches, welcome to 2020s, right? And now it's time for you to change and actually coach differently than the way you were coached. It's like, oh, no, because they don't have any film on that it will produce great results, because this is a new time. This is a new way of introducing well-being, really introducing fun, having all these components. And, are we going to be able to produce championships? I think the answer is absolutely. And it will be a lot more joy included in it. That is not the way people that are coaching now have been coached.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, your teams that function well, they function as a unit. They function as a family. They probably do things outside of the sport together because they're genuinely friends off the field. And so it's not just, something you say, okay, well, preseason, we're going to go on a retreat because that's what we're supposed to do. No. There has to be, like, team building's real. If the team cares about each other, trusts each other, then of course they're going to trust each other in practice. And then of course it's just going to be seamless in the game. But the coach has to be at the beginning of that. They have to actually be the one saying, yes, this is a good idea, and here's why. They have to explain that. And that's kind of why the Lasso way, if you will, or really been, not to be spoilers, but now the Richmond way, because it was never about Ted. That he really instilled that they are a family.
Well, the wooden way, I mean, anybody that's great, it is a way, and it is a way that translates so much more off of the court as well. I mean, you produce great people, and so many people say that, and yet we've entered into the pressure of winning, and it is a lot of pressure. We've got NIL now, we've got, coaches combating all kinds of things. I mean, wow, so much change going on. So I do want to be intentional about the change component. And I want to, before we just go into change, I want to bring in the third element, which is parents, and really the people that are talking to you away from sports. So we've got the individual that sets their goals and gets intentional about it, has a coach, has people lined up to really help them achieve their SMART goals. And then they have a coach, and the coach is in alignment with that, and they're working on themselves and also the team. And then we've got the parents that are really somewhat outside of that circle, that are chatting constantly in the ear, and they could have a different message. How can we get parents on the same team?
So I think it comes down to control. And so the parents were really responsible for, fostering a sense of independence in the child. So teaching the kid how to fish, and so but they can't do the fishing for them. They much less can they play the sport for them. The kid has got to choose, to be their own choice to play because they like it to play, because they enjoy playing. They like being a part of the team or whatever. So it's they need to check themselves that, it's a part of them. Maybe the kid's genetically 50% of them, but they're not their kid. And so the kid gets to do their own thing, just as they were granted the opportunity to do their own thing when they were their age. Easier said than done, especially when there's pressure of dollar signs and scholarships and maybe it's the meal ticket or whatever. And the parents feel so invested that they want to control the situation yet. They have zero control other than to be supportive. And that's really hard to get a parent to. One, I get that because they're probably high powered and performance driven and rubs off on their kid, and maybe their kid just looks up to them and thinks that they're just the best thing since sliced bread, and maybe they don't want their parent to not be involved. Maybe they want them to be right there with them. That's another thing. That's where a good coach is going to figure out how to meander this to like carefully separate but keep them merged, and then that's the work we do. But the parents need to realize that the coach has their own job. They were hired to help with the team. That is the coach's purview. The parent's job is to be a fan, to be supportive. Just I like to put this back to eating disorder treatment, and bear with me here. When a family-based model, the parents are in charge of that. They're the ones that have been told, here's what we're doing. The kids, on the other hand, the siblings of the child who might have the disordered eating, they're just the cheerleaders. They're the fans. They're not the food police. So on the sideline, back to sport, they just need to sit in the stands. They shouldn't be yelling at the ref. In fact, I mean, I'm guilty of it. You get in the heat of the game, you're going to be screaming all kinds of stuff. But if you're actually causing a negative experience for your kid on the field, that then rubs off on the kid's performance, on the team's performance. And yeah, you have a little bit of responsibility there that you might have negatively impacted that. And also then the coach is going to get a bit annoyed too. And you don't want the coach taking it out on your kid because they just simply can't handle it. Because the coaches come in to foster a positive environment. And if you're part of that negative equation, then what are you doing?
Well, Mark, I always say that you are president, as a parent, you are president of your child's fan club. I mean, that is, every parent needs to be, and every kid needs a president of their fan club, right? We all need a mom and a dad or a family. We need that beautiful support team that, thinks I'm it. I mean, that's beautiful. And then we have to go merge with everybody else that's got a fan club and a president of a fan club, and the coach is managing all of that. So, as a parent, as a mom of 3 little women who have been in sports and certainly been involved in that, it is a very difficult mental change unless you really focus on just loving being mom. I mean, I know I'm the only mom they get. So I want to be the best mom there is. I know they're going to have a lot of coaches. I know they're going to have a lot of teammates. And I actually welcome all that variety while I get to own my number one spot that nobody else gets. I mean, that's pretty special. And so if I transition and leave being mom and go into being coach and teammate and friend, and I've left really the number one spot that I've got.
I mean, you gotta trust that your kid is going to perform how they perform, and they're going to do how they're doing on the field. I mean, you have no control over it. So just as like, say you're going on vacation and you see something beautiful out and you want to take a photo of it. That's great. Snap a photo, but don't at a concert have a video and videotape the whole thing and then not experience it. So if you're on the sideline and you're getting so wrapped up with stuff, you're not enjoying it. You're not experiencing maybe the joy of your kid playing really well, or the tragedy of defeat, because then you have to be the supportive parent in the car ride on the way home or afterwards. You have to be present. So being present and thinking that you can control something you can't control gets in the way of being present and actually being a good parent.
And the joy of it, Mark. I really want to focus on that, because when we talk about winning well-being and navigating through change and really being intentional, the joy is the missing piece. We can get so focused on the performance and the wins or the losses that we lose sight of, this is our life. This is what we're spending and investing every day in. These are our children. They will grow up. They are going to leave sport too. I mean, from an identity management perspective, I can't be so ingrained in my child that if they win, I'm a winner. If they lose, I'm a loser. And there's all this pressure that's happening. How do we separate the identities?
Well, identity, again, that could be its own topic, and we've kind of talked about it in the past.
We talk about it a lot, identity management.
Yeah. I think build the last tenet of self-efficacy, which again, part of building confidence and tying in identity here is surrounding yourself with positive social persuasion. That's from the athlete side, but on the flip side, that part of that cohort is your family and your friends, and so they actually need to then realize that their role is being a positive force in your life, and kind of fostering that. Yes, it's you want them to become independent and to figure out who they are. And so, and it changes over time. You know, you have latency age, so that's prepubertal. That's when you're doing a lot of just like mastery development. Oh Lord, that's part of building confidence. Then you have then there's adolescence. It is trial by fire. That's when you're testing a lot of limits and actually developing some of that confidence to be able to be independent. And then eventually, boom, you're now an adult in the eyes of the law, and you're either going off to college or having a first job or whatever. As an 18 to 25-year-old, your brain's not done developing. You still need to have that positive social influence that kind of help. You're on your own, but you're still sort of in the bubble. You might be living at home for all I know these days. But eventually you're going to leave the nest. And then after 25, the frontal lobe is developed. You've hopefully had all that positive sphere to really develop a healthy ego, and you can go do your thing. So again, that's in stages, and the parents have different roles in different spots. So
Let's talk about the brain not being developed yet, because most of our dialogue is about the college athlete and then the professional athlete. We're really hitting that 18 and on. Certainly this all relates to, every age, and yet we're really specializing in our conversations on that 18 and above. And so, yes, as I leave college, I want to be an adult. I mean, I leave high school, I want to be an adult. I've got all of this, but as you said, my brain is not developed yet. So how do we develop the brain in a positive way?
as we've kind of stated before, there's things you can do on your own, and then how you surround yourself with, again, positive influences. So the brain is neuroplastic. It's ever changing, and the more positive experiences you have, probably the more positive neural pathways that are developed will happen. If you've gone through a traumatic event, you still can have growth after trauma, assuming you're getting the appropriate help you need, either through therapy or trusted friend, family, all that stuff. But the basic stuff, even we touched on it last time: healthy nutrition, staying on a schedule, a written schedule,
Rituals and routines, yes.
Thank you. A healthy sleep schedule. Sleep is restorative. It helps clear the brain of all of the inflammatory stuff that's happened during the day. We don't really know exactly the true role, but I can assure you that if you haven't had enough sleep, you're going to be more grumpy and irritable, not performing as well, not focusing, concentrating one night. It is the building block. And then there's that wonderful book, Why We Sleep. We'll make sure we have a marker on that. So yeah, nutrition, exercise, ritual and routine, and sleep. If you've covered that, and then also you're doing the spiritual enrichment and family enrichment along that, and then also having something that, like, the part of that ritual and routine, industry, a sense of industry, something that you're doing, a goal to work towards, a SMART goal. Oh, we're going back. Then you should be good to go, enjoying your life.
I was going to say, and having fun. We definitely want to make sure that having fun is included, whether it's in your rest and recovery, wherever it is. I mean, what a gift to bring joy and fun. Now, if we're wired to be negative, or if we're wired to be always, looking out for the bad things to happen, or we have a lot of anxiety, we've lived through a lot. So just want to really be intentional about, we love the concept of being positive, and yet a lot of our world is not feeling positive right now. So if we need to be able to be set up to win in our lives and be successful, and it requires hanging out with positive people, and yet our news is bad, there's so much out there. How do we really be intentional to respect that we can't get rid of our family or get rid of our friends, and yet we do need positivity to create a positive life?
Yeah, forget what silly movie from the 90s, but it might have been like Wayne's World or something. It was like, harness good, block bad. It's circular. Like, why would you continue to expose yourself to negative social media? We talked about that earlier. Why would you, if you're seeing that the experience is a negative one, then simply don't do that. Focus on things that you enjoy and that are helpful. Um, this is when your friends group really matters. If you find that that when you're supposed to be having fun, that, that y'all are getting in trouble, or it's just been a negative influence, or your family's telling you that they don't approve of your friends, probably there's a reason why. They're just not being annoying. Maybe you listen to that helpful external voice that's part of your genetic code. Then yeah, that'll be better.
And Mark, you're stepping right into change management, because the minute that we decide we have a SMART goal, we start going for it. It gets tough. Our family says, give up, don't worry about it. That generation, we really kind of trying to keep people where we are. And yet we want change, like we want to be different. And that change can mean we have to leave home, or we have to set boundaries around family, or we have to choose different family groups or different friend groups. This is really tough. We're talking about something that has been kind of instilled in our operating system, that, oh, our family is always negative, or our family does it this way, or our friends get together and they just have the habit of getting drunk, or we have friends that get together and they have the habit of being negative and really bashing everything. What's going on in our brain when we want change, and why is it so hard?
Well, if you're wanting change, there's clearly, you're clearly recognizes innately that something's not going right, and that you're craving another new experience, novelty, that you're human. I you don't you can't you can't get to the other side of the mountain without taking a risk, but it has to be calculated risk. You have to put in the time and effort. But if you don't ever actually act on it, then you're going to be stuck in the same place. And so there's a concept of motivational interviewing, which I think we're going to talk about in the future, where when someone's very stuck and they're not actually seeing that the change would benefit them, they have to weigh the risks and benefits of continuing their current habits. So what am I actually getting out of X, Y, Z behavior? What short-term benefits am I getting versus the long-term negatives? If the long-term negatives outweigh the short-term benefits, then what are you doing? Because it's really setting you back. And so the process of the therapy is to gradually expose the person to recognize that the long-term negatives actually do outweigh the positives, so they do need to actually shift their mindset. Mind you, that is not an overnight process. That is a long-term therapeutic modality, and takes someone with skill to work with all of the sneaky behaviors that can come from, be it getting over substance use or any other kind of addiction. But it's getting the person who might recognize that they need a change, they can't necessarily do it on their own. That's why support groups exist. That's why therapists exist, to be able to be that external brain to help shift you.
Mark, thank you so much for today's conversation about
Yeah.
confidence. Team, I want you to really hear that. Get help, ask for help, get a support team, get a coach, get a therapist, get whoever you need. Make sure that they are for you, and make sure that you start by being for you, determining what you want, and then surrounding yourself with people who A, are doing what you want, and B, are happy to have you on the journey with them, to bring you along and help you be part of it. Life is amazing when we share it with people that really are for us, and every one of us are getting better moment by moment because we're together. So as much as we want that, make sure that you are that too. Make sure that you're the person that is positive, that is for people, that really brings out the best in everyone. Starting with yourself is a beautiful place to start, and then it can radiate out really in a way that we can be that change that we want in the world, and we can be the positive influence. So Mark, so grateful that you are on our team, and ready to help and serve and support our team of sports life coaches. We are here to coach you through change as well. And here we go. Let's do this. And most importantly, start with figuring out what we want, start practicing it, and confidence will show up. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.